everybody. You ready to rock? Thank you for being here for day 2 of Denver Startup in 2022. This is the product track. We have Amanda and Kate here to talk about 5 mindset shifts for getting into product and 5 mindset shifts in your first year getting into product. I'm Ryan. I'm one of the co-chairs of the product track. You might see Scotty as well. We help run everything on the product track, get everything set up, make sure there's great content. I'm here to talk about our amazing sponsors because Denver Startup Week is the largest free startup-focused event in the world, which is pretty cool. And this wouldn't happen without our amazing slate of sponsors. So Capital One, Dell, Downtown Denver Partnership, and Amazon are kind of the main title sponsors. But for the product track, Pi Insurance is why we're all here. Pi is insurance for small businesses, so if anyone has a need for that, please check out Pi. We've got a couple other partner sponsors, member sponsors, headline sponsors. You'll see a bunch of this kind of content around Denver Startup Week throughout the week. So shout out to them. Shout out to y'all for being here. And turn it over to Kate now.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Yes, thank you all so much for coming out early. I've told Amanda I'm usually like barely awake at this time because my stand-up every day is at 10 a.m. So thank you all for coming out early. One other thing that I have to say before we get started, which is that by being at this session, you are agreeing to the Denver Startup Week Code of Conduct. You are also agreeing to be photographed and filmed. They are filming our session. They will be filming all the sessions and they'll eventually be up on YouTube. I think it might be a week or two because there's a small but mighty team working on uploading all of the video. So watch out for that. If there's anything that you missed, you'll be able to see it later. Cool. Well, let's get into it. Our session today is called So You've Stumbled into Product, and we're going to talk about 5 mindset shifts to making your first year. We'll also talk about what stumbled means, because it's going to mean something very different for everyone. It means something very different for Amanda and I. So again, my name is Kate Mills, and I'm very honored to be here with my lovely coworker and co-presenter, Amanda Gaffney.
Hi, friend. Yeah, so you've stumbled into a presentation by Amanda and Kate. So here's what you can expect from us. First, we're going to start with our journeys into product and a little bit about us. One of our goals of this session is to make you feel validated in your journey into product. Oh, yep. Thank you. I appreciate if I forget that, which I probably will. Please, give me a hand signal. So we each sort of stumbled in, and we feel like that would be validating to share with you what that looked like. We also want to know a little bit about you so that we can tailor our presentation to what's going to be most useful to you. Then we'll dive into the meat of this, which is the 5 mindset shift that we recommend that you make in your first year in product and get started on now. And then we want to save, Kate and I could be a little wordy, so we'll try to keep it tight, but we really do want to leave some time for Q&A. If we don't have a lot of time for that, you're super welcome to stay and talk to us afterwards and pick our brains and tell us we, nailed it today. Just kidding. All right. Hello, slide. Slide not working.
There you go.
Here we go. Go for it, Kate. Oh, no, sorry. But we hope to get out of it. So we really hope that as you're considering, whether you're considering this or whether you're in your first year and drowning, as I did in my first year, we really want you to feel that you're not alone in that. And we also know that there's a ton of tactical skills that you need to learn with any job, but product and design require a really unique way that your brain needs to work and the way that you should approach problems. And we find that that's actually more important for finding success early on. So we're hoping to share some of the ways we had to change our brains or lean into some of those skills so that we could do our jobs more effectively.
Cool, so for Q&A at the end, we're gonna leave as much time as possible, and you can go ahead and start submitting any questions that you have. We've set up a Slido. Slido is just like an online way to collect questions. You can access it via this link, and this will be on multiple slides, so you don't need to memorize it or anything. What you can also do is go in and upvote questions, and in doing so, that'll kind of help us prioritize at the end if there are a few questions. Cool, so we are gonna start off. Is your remote working?
Yes, I have to get rid of the Wi-Fi. We're good now.
So we're gonna start, as Amanda said, with a little bit about who we are, more about our journeys, and actually how we got here, literally here, standing here today, talking to you. And Amanda's going to go first and tell us about her.
Yeah, so first of all, I have been producting since May of 2019. My entire career has been at Sondermind so far. And I'll talk a little bit about how I got there as a 34-year-old woman. I stand before you. So first, in college, I was a theater arts major. So I focused on 2 tracks. One was set design, so I was a techie. And the other was on outreach or educational theater, so working with kids in under-resourced communities through theater. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I graduated. I knew that I was excited about helping folks, and that's about as much as I knew. So I ended up joining a program which gave me a teacher certification and allowed me to move to South Louisiana and teach the kiddos, which I thought was just going to be a 2-year stint, but I actually really loved it, and so I ended up staying in it for a total of 6 years. And so I taught elementary school and 6th grade English and social studies, which actually was great. Like 6th graders are super weird, and so am I, so it was a really good fit. So it wasn't like the kids. I love the kids and I love teaching, but I did get burned out by the public education system. Unfortunately, like so many people, it's rough, but the kids are wonderful and I love teaching. Oh, nope, back. Sorry, that was the reveal of the surprise. So have any of you driven over the Continental Divide to Steamboat Springs? Raise your hand if you've done that. And you've seen like the weird yellow signs all the way to Steamboat? That's where I landed, you guys. I rebooted my whole career at a Western wear store in Steamboat Springs. Despite having grown up in New York and never touched a horse in my life, I was selling cowboy boots. So like, hard reboot. But I ended up actually really loving retail, and like I kind of do this where I find a thing and then I lean into it super hard and get really excited about it, and retail was no exception. Cowboy boots were no exception. And I stayed in retail and customer service for a while. I worked at a startup baby boutique with like 4 of us, and then ended up working for one of our vendors. At some point I became a mother. That's my baby. We flew 13 times together in her first year of life. This is an exciting adventure. And there I did events, I did some logistics, and I also was our customer service manager. Loved all of it, and then was ready to leave, and this company, Sondermind, was hiring. And I had actually used Sondermind 2 years before that, even before they were like a full company, before we got funding, any of that, to find a therapist. And I was like, heck yeah, I love that mission. I'm super excited to work there. And so one of my wonderful colleagues, Lauren Dowdy, ended up getting the position I applied for, which was customer service manager, but they were like, stick around, we think we have a spot for you. We just got Series A and we're hiring, and it's like bananas around here. And so I got passed sort of around different teams to see where it would be a good fit. And our VP of product at the time was like, we'd like to offer you a position as a product manager. Do you want that? And I was like, yeah, like super yes, please give me that job. What is a product manager? What does this do? I literally had never heard of this job prior to getting it. So when I say that like my experience in product, I had like 0 minutes prior to Sondermind, and I've truly stumbled and have been learning on the job for 3 years. It's been a cool adventure. Can you next slide me?
Yes. Oh, maybe.
Or not. Bless you.
Oh, sorry. Our
you're
remote
good.
stopped working.
Hey, there's me at Sondermind. So a little bit about my time. I had is it just forward arrow?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it was really exciting to start as the first product manager at Sondermind because I got to learn the business really deeply and the technology really deeply, which has really served me as I've been here for 3 years. And then as we started to grow, we started to sort of specialize in different areas. So I got to work on our intake area where our clients come in to get matched. Kate will talk more about that because that's her current track. I then got to work with our architecture and platform team as a technical PM, which was really nifty. I also worked on our internal tooling. We have an internal application. And then went back sort of to the intake space and worked on matching and bringing machine learning into our automated matching algorithm, which was an absolute blast. And then just as of about a month ago, I've actually moved out of PMing and into a program manager role under product operations to help with our business and product planning to enable all of my friends to do their jobs the best that they can. That's about it for my life story. Kate?
Really quick, sorry, I'm just gonna refresh our remotes. Of course it worked while we were practicing, and now it's like,
She's not into it.
yeah, okay. Oh, darn, I might
I
just
can
have.
just advance us. That's
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. It's not working, of course. Anyway, I am Kate, like I've said. I've been UXing officially since 2017. I say officially because sort of unofficially 2016, but I was a student. I got my first like true gig in 2017. And now I work with Amanda at Sondermind. I've been there for a year this month, and I work on the intake team. So intake is all about getting people into their first therapy session. That's our big goal in intake. And so I focus on everything from bringing people in, introducing them to what Sondermind does, getting to know more about them and what they're trying to get out of therapy, matching them with a licensed licensed therapist who will be able to help them get better, and then starting to facilitate those initial conversations to get them scheduled. So, how did I get to Sondermind? My long and winding road that led me to your door. I am also going to start in college. I double majored in English literature and film studies, almost as useful as Amanda's majors. And I really loved academia. I loved school, and I loved those things that I was studying. But I didn't have a super clear picture of what I was going to do after school, besides maybe more school, maybe being a professor one day. I wasn't totally sure, to be honest. What I did know, though, was that at 21, and I know this makes me very unique, I wanted to travel, and I wanted to live in a foreign country because I never had. I know, very, very unique. So what I did is I got a job teaching English in Taiwan, not because I wanted to teach or because I like kids, because neither of those were true at all. I wanted to travel, and I wanted to live in a foreign country. What I found during this year, which was very formative in my life, was that I actually did like teaching, and I actually liked kids. No one was more surprised more than I was. But it was always the plan to do that for a year, so I came back, and I was in my early 20s, and I kind of floated for a while. Maybe some of you also floated in your early 20s. It wasn't completely directionless floating, but it definitely was floating. I had multiple jobs at any given time. I had lots of side hustles. It was a lot of restaurants and retail. I tended to fall into training positions at those places, which kind of wasn't surprising considering the teaching thing. But I definitely was floating. During this time, I started teaching myself graphic design, just a little way to get out some creativity. I had always really loved drawing and illustration, and I started learning how to do that digitally. So learned Illustrator and Photoshop, and got a little Wacom tablet. It was very cute. I had a little Etsy shop and did craft fairs. But I was floating in a direction, and that was back to the classroom, to teaching. I went back and got my certification. I did the whole subbing thing for a while. I did my student teaching, and then I went back into the classroom full time, mainly middle school language arts. Again, I love weirdo 12-year-olds. We have a connection. And I lasted all of 3 years, so half the time that Amanda did, before I got completely burned out, which honestly at the time was totally devastating because I loved teaching so much, but I hated being a teacher. I was so miserable, it wasn't a sustainable career for me. While I was teaching, I learned about this thing called UX. I had never heard of it before. I had a couple friends who had gone into it, and I was oh wow, that's everything I love to do, kind of smashed together, and everything I think I'm pretty good at. So after quitting teaching, I actually went back to school again, my initial thought back as a young person, and I got my master's in design things. It was a one-year master's program that focused on all things like design, development, product, business, all of that good stuff. I focused on UX design, and it was super terrifying to go back to school as an older person, but it's the best decision that I've ever made. I even started freelancing when I was still a student, but got my first full-time gig a week or two after graduation. This picture, you can't see it because of the light, but my little dog's here under the table. It was really thrilling in 2017 before a worldwide pandemic for someone who had never had a job where you could work from home to be able to work from home. I was yes, I have made it. So that's 5 or so years later, that's how I am here today. So that's my story. Amanda, what can these fine people take away from our stories?
I'm so glad you asked, Kate. Yeah, I mean, truly you can see, first of all, Kate and I have like a spookily similar story, which when we talk to product managers, it's very rarely like, well, I went to school for product management and then thank you, Clarissa, and then I like got my first job in product or design, and then it's like, I used to be like a beet farmer in whatever, like, it's so, we just want you to know that like, if you feel like your background is like an inhibitor to you moving forward in this career, or you're having imposter syndrome, like some of us, certainly not me, but like some of us have, you're not alone, and we want to help you out today with kind of clearing some of that.
Cool, so you met us. Now we want to know more about you. You've seen our journeys. We want to know where you all are in your journey. So we're going to ask you to do, it's a very mildly interactive thing. I know it's early, but standing up, like sitting is the new smoking, all we're going to do is ask you to stand up, okay? And you probably only have to do it once. But sit for now, let me intro. We want to know where you currently are in your product or UX journey. We have 4 categories. Think about the one that you're closest to, or maybe you're in more than one, and then you can stand more than once. So the first answer is those people who are students considering a product or design career after school. Our second category, thank you, is people currently considering a career change. And then we have people who are like early in their product or design career. That last one is the catch-all, the generally just curious. So if you didn't belong in any of the other ones, then you're in the last one. Okay, so when I kind of call your answer, I'm just gonna ask you to stand up. We're gonna say hi. It will be relatively painless. All right, so who are our students considering a product or design career after school?
We hate learning here.
No students, okay, easy. How many people are doing something else right now but are considering a career change?
Heck yeah.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yay,
See,
thank
guys,
you.
That's awesome. Be brave.
I can like feel the hustle in your veins. Like the fact that you're here right now is a very good sign. So thank you, welcome.
Thanks, guys.
How many people are like early in their product or design career?
We love you.
Whoa,
You got
oh my
this.
gosh. Congratulations on your new or newish gig.
That's
It's awesome that you're here. We hope that you learn a thing or two. And then who's everyone else? And that's me. I'm just going to raise my hand because I'm already standing. Who's generally just curious? It's like everyone else.
Oh, fun. Thanks for coming.
Hi.
That's awesome.
Thanks, everyone. All right, interesting. So the students are like sleeping in this morning, but you people, career changers and like new folks.
They'll watch it on YouTube later, I'm sure.
Exactly. So we are going to get into the mindset shifts and how to apply them. So we'll give some specific examples of when we've actually applied them.
Yeah, right on. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but tactical skills are something that you have to learn in any job. But again, what we're hoping that you get out of these mindset shifts is how you can start working toward just sort of like your mental approach and your emotional approach to product and design. So our 5 mindset shifts are 1, stay curious. 2, you're going to fail a lot.
Sorry.
3, soft skills aren't so soft, my friend. That's got Kate all over it, by the way. That's like all her personality. I love it. Fast learnings are often more effective than large initiatives. And to leverage the people around you. Want to party, Kate?
Yeah, let's party. I have the first one, which is stay curious forever. Very dramatic. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this, what this is about. So fall in love with your problems and your people. At its most basic, UX, design, and product, those jobs are solving problems for people. That's the job at its most basic. We do it slightly differently in complementary ways, but that's the job. So fall in love with your problems and your people. And if love is like too intense for you right now, like feels like too much of a commitment, just go ahead and get really, really interested in these things. Get to know as much as you can about your problem areas and the people in them. And a little bit about how to do that. It is not about having all the answers, because you can't. That is not how it works. What you can do, and this emoji is questionable, I realize, but I'm going with it. What you can do is learn to ask the right questions. So asking the right questions, that's a skill, and you'll get better at it. You also tend to get better at it as you get to know more about an area. Like, you're really good at asking questions to figure out where all the trapdoors in the floor are. But everyone has to start somewhere, and the place where you can start is staying curious. Approach every new challenge with a genuine sense of curiosity. Check your pride at the door. Know that you don't have all the answers, and you never will. But what you can do is try to be as informed as possible by your problem area and your users. Because it's not about you, my friends. So I'm going to tell a story around this. I'm calling it a modern staying curious story, because this is a current work in progress. This is about my work at Sondermind. So let's go back a year. Wayne's World, anyone? Okay. So how it started. When I started Sondermind a year ago, I joined the intake team. Like I said, our big goal with intake is to get people into their first therapy session. And at the time, like, a lot of my initial design projects that I was working on were all around this idea of like getting people to give us their insurance and credit card. Because what the current like big insight was that the key to getting people into their first therapy session is getting them to give us their insurance and credit card. At Sondermind, we call this completing your account. And this didn't come from nowhere. It was based on data. We saw that like if people completed their account, they were much more likely to actually keep on going and schedule their first session. And this was cool. It did really feel like, though, in this big, what we call conversion funnel, you know, the top is people coming into Sondermind, the bottom is that conversion event where people are scheduling. It felt like a bit of a black box. So we knew people were coming in. We knew at some point they're completing their account, but like, yeah, oh, what else? What else were they doing? We gave them a lot more other actions that they could do. So it felt like there was a lot more going on there that we didn't necessarily know or have total clarity of. So I was new, so I was newly curious. I hadn't even had to start or stay curious at this point. I was newly curious. So I started asking like a ton of questions. What else are clients doing before scheduling? What's their process? Which actions are most meaningful or actually motivating? Like this whole complete your account thing, is that actually motivating? Does it motivate you to fill out your credit card in a payment form? Maybe. And the numbers were like pretty good, but they weren't like a total home run, so it felt like there was probably more here. So, you know, designers, we can be quite annoying. So we just kept on asking questions, and so we eventually started answering them. So we partnered with our data analysis folks and started looking at what other data do we have? What else can we track? What else, how else can we look at this? How can we like slice it in different ways? What is this group doing? What is that group doing? How can we get a much more complete data picture besides just this completing your account thing? And what happened was a much more complete data picture, which is that engagement with therapists is what moves most clients towards their first therapy session. Surprise, surprise, it's not filling out a credit card form. It's meeting someone who you feel safe with, who starts to help you understand what therapy can do for you. That's what's gonna motivate you to actually wanna schedule. And so, again, we kind of went from what seemed like more of a black box to a much clearer picture of each of these steps that people are taking to get into therapy. So, this is something that is very much in progress, but we now have a clear picture of our conversion funnel at Sondermind, because every company's conversion funnel, I didn't make this up, it's a thing. Every company's conversion funnel is gonna be specific to them. So now we have a much clearer idea of what people are doing at each step, what their goals are, actually how they're engaging. And then we have, I know it's tiny, but those metrics on the side. That's an idea of like what we can measure at each step so that we can, as we ship a new feature, try to grease those tracks to get more people into therapy. We can measure and say like, were we successful or were we not? Sorry, I saw people taking pictures, so I'm just pausing a second.
Wait
And
time.
again, I didn't invent this. There's tons of really great examples out there, but it's always going to be specific to your company because everyone's flow is different. And here's the thing. That looks really snazzy, and it's become a very new direction for our projects. We're focusing a lot less on just complete your account, complete your account. How can we push more people into that? And much more about how what is our role as Sondermind? How do we help facilitate those initial conversations so that people can meet their dream therapist? Because that's the goal. We want to get people help, we want to get them into therapy, and that's about pairing people together really effectively. This is work in progress. It's going to change. So you took a picture, in a month that'll probably be out of date, which is great. I still have to keep on staying curious. The team still has to keep on staying curious, keep on asking questions. We know a lot more, but we still, oh my God, we absolutely do not know everything. We have so much more to learn. So stay curious and don't stop, ever. So we've talked about staying curious. Let's talk about failing.
Let's talk about failing. By the way, if you are interested, I don't think Kate and I'm speaking for you, but I think we're okay to send out our slide deck. So if like you're a kind of person who would rather read things than this, you can reach out to us and we'll certainly send it out. So yeah, you are going to fail a lot. I don't know if anyone else in the room is a firstborn girl child, but like failure is really scary. So this is something, this has probably been, and this is still, speaking of work in progress, this is still something I really struggle with. So full transparency, what I'm about to share now is something that I'm like mantraing for myself every day. So first, failure is part of the job. It kind of goes with part of stay curious. A really great mentor that I had once said that your ideas or what you try are going to be wrong 50% of the time. So like, you just need to be able to roll with the punches and know what to do when that inevitably happens, because it will. And it doesn't mean you're a bad PM. It doesn't mean you're a bad designer. It just means like you had a hypothesis, you tested it, and that hypothesis was wrong, so what's the next one?
You just gave me the shivers, I will say,
Oh, really?
when you said that. 50% of the time, doesn't that just like hurt you?
Yeah, it's in your
It's true,
soul.
but it hurts.
But the good news is that like both successes and failures teach you something. Like you're gonna get data out of it. You're gonna get something that's useful for moving forward. And so just like learn from it and keep on trying. Like anything else you do in life, like learn from your experience and grow from it. So here's one of my dozens, probably hundreds of failure stories. And as Kate and I were making this presentation, I realized that I was talking about my intake experience, and I was the one kind of working through some of the hypotheses that Kate rightfully shattered in her time here. So this is the time my main metric, client conversion, fell by 10% after I released a feature with my team. So the problem, as Kate said, is that we have this conversion funnel. We had some clear steps, like 5 clear steps at the time. And we were seeing, oh, that's real hard to read. I'm sorry if you need some better color differences there for reading, but it says 12% drop off at this step, which, as Kate said, was when we were collecting payment information from clients. And so the hypothesis at the time was we get what we give. It's not too far off from what Kate is finding now, but there was some difference in like maybe oversimplifying that problem at the time. And so we were like, great, we see through user research and we can hypothesize from our data that clients are not willing to give us that kind of sensitive information without getting value from us. Like, that's a pretty simple way. Like, why would I give you my money if I'm getting nothing from you? And so we thought that if we gave more value or therapist matches earlier in the process, that we would have more client buy-in so that they would complete their account, which is what we knew at the time was the leading indicator that someone was going to schedule and complete a session with a therapist. Good news, the feature that we released worked for our hypothesis. We were right. That 12% fell to 9%, except it super did not. The whole metric overall, from top of funnel to bottom, fell by 10%. Basically, like, we did solve a problem, but there was something that we missed in there because we were just shifting fall off to other parts of the process. And at the time, we didn't know why. So step one, I grieved, I cried, I questioned if I was even built for this career. I was like, maybe I should be a beet farmer in God knows where. And so after that grief, which you can totally have, emotions are real, we had a data party. And so this is actually while I was transitioning out of intake. So our wonderful new PM, we got to partner for a short time, and then Kate came on. But we really dug into the data. Like, we saw the shifts in where people had dropped off. We tried to get some more answers out of our user research and kind of mined some of that to see what we could have missed. But the most important thing is, like, beyond that, we had to start generating some hypotheses. Like, we couldn't just sit on this failure. We couldn't mire in data. Like, we had a few thoughts about why this might have happened. Do they not like the therapist matches we gave them? And what we actually did was like give them less value than they were hoping for in the first place. Like there was a lot of space to play in that. And then experiment. And I'll talk a little bit later about sort of like small initiatives or small tests versus large initiatives that helped us gain some information from there. Kate, on over to you.
Cool. The next one we're going to talk about is how soft skills aren't so soft, my friends. I really love this one. I do end up talking to a lot of people about career change, like friends of friends, like acquaintances. Someone cold messaged me on LinkedIn 2 weeks ago, which I totally did when I was trying to get into this. Hot tip. And this is one that I love talking about, and I talk about it a lot. So, oh, sorry, will you go back?
Yep, sure can.
So the soft skills, we kind of mentioned like hard skills earlier. Hard skills are those more technical skills. They tend to be specific to a job. Soft skills are like their weird country cousin. It's more like how you do your job. It's a lot about how you interact with people. And these tend to be in common over many, many jobs. So the cool thing about soft skills is that you are bringing them with you from any prior experience that you have. And there are a lot that are very important in both UX and product. So I'm going to talk about a few.
This is an unplanned interruption of your thing. I've stopped, people used to tell me like, your soft skills are so good. And I was actually like, didn't feel great in my heart. So I've like started thinking of them as like transferable skills. Like they're things that can go anywhere that aren't necessarily like those tactical ones. Sorry, I did not,
All
that
good.
was not planned. Please continue.
When I was practicing this, and Amanda heard me say this, like when I clicked over and showed a new one, I'd be like, oh my God, this is so important. And I'm not gonna do that today, I'm gonna spare you all. But in your head, I want you to hear me saying like, oh my God, that's so important, okay? So let's do them. Precise, concise, and energizing storytelling. Are you hearing it? Oh my God, that's so important. Okay, next one is facilitating meetings and collaboration. You'll do this more and more as you get more senior, for sure. Communication, oh my God, so huge. Seems simple, but is not. Written, verbal, nonverbal, all important. What else we got? Relationship building and bringing people together. I'm not a PM, but I'm pretty sure this is like 95% of a PM's job, more or less. Next one is listening, another type of nonverbal communication. Being organized, again, seems simple, is not. Critical thinking, I've already talked about problem solving. Understanding people and how they think. If you're a people person, you are in the right place, my friend. Okay, keep on going. Helping others achieve a goal. I think I have one more, time management. All of these are super, super important. Oh, if you click over one more time, and so much more. There really are so many more that I could go on, but I won't. Like I said, soft skills are so, so important. Often I feel like they are a majority of the skill set that you need in UX or in product. And I really mean that. I'm not just buttering you all up. Like they are so super vital for you to be able to do your job. Which is to say, do not underestimate or undervalue your soft abilities. Did you all hear me in the back? Do not underestimate or undervalue your soft abilities. They are so crazy important, and you will fail without them. I'm sorry to tell you. If you looked at that list and was like, I can't do any of those, you have a hard road ahead of you. But if you looked at it and even one, and probably many, if you're like, I do that, and I do that pretty well, awesome.
I love that you turned into a full-on motivational speaker. Like, you can do it, you can do it.
I seriously do about this, because I came into this gig and I was like, I have no experience. No one values what teachers can do. I still do think that, which it's wrong. So if any of you remember that, teachers can do a lot. But I came in and was just like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't have like any good skills or like experience. But what I found, again, was that like my soft skills were super strong. So let me tell you about one way that you can apply this. And that's UX workshops or like product design workshops. Soft skills are your key to success with these. Being a good designer is not. Just because you're a good designer doesn't mean you can run a good workshop. So some of you might not know what like a UX workshop is. I'll tell you. Our Nielsen Norman group will tell you. UX workshops are intensive collaborative sessions used to solve problems and enable progress on a particular challenge throughout the design timeline. Workshops enable participants to come together for a concentrated time of idea generation and hands-on activities, keywords, that allow them to achieve an actionable goal. When I first got into design and learned that workshops were something that could be really valuable to your design process, I got really excited because I was like, cool, it's a lesson. I did this every day for years and years. That's all this is. It really isn't. A lot of the activities are actually the same that like teachers are doing with 12-year-olds. Sorry to tell you, but adults are just big children. It's all the same stuff. And so what that meant is that I was actually pretty good at these pretty early on. Even though workshops can sometimes be, depending on where you are, a little bit more senior of a responsibility, I was really kind of pretty good at these from the jump. I stole this from this guy, Michael Mazur. He's from Poland, so I'm not 100%, but I think it's Michael. He wrote this article on how to run an effective design workshop, and I totally just jacked this from him because I loved it so much. He says solid facilitation is 70% of success in workshops. And yes, he made up that number, and I'm gonna make up that the other 30% is planning, which good planning processes are also pretty much a soft skill. It is very easy for a workshop to go south very quickly due to poor facilitation. I just saw like a really like sad and somber like yes from this guy over here. It is true, it happens so easily. Like good facilitation, that's keeping the flow of things, keeping people engaged and on task. Adults are big children, but they can also be very stubborn children, and it can be really easy for like rabbit holes to take all of your time, and at the end you're like, okay, we got through 2 of the 5 things I wanted to do, and now we have nothing. You know, it's also about being able to like pivot in the moment when like your time is running out or something in the workshop maybe changed your direction slightly. And really, it is the vast majority of your success. I said that planning was the other 30%. So admittedly, as I've gained more experience as a designer, as I've learned more about product strategy, I've gotten better at planning. Because planning, it's less about the activities. Those are a little bit hand-wavy. I mean, I say that, like I said, I used to be a teacher, so I'm like, I can make an activity out of anything. But really what planning is coming up with a super actionable goal or objective that is very well thought through and is actually going to help you make progress in your design timeline. It's also coming up with what that deliverable is going to be. The point of a workshop is not doing the workshop, it's your goal at the end and making sure that you get there. Again, I've seen a lot of workshops kind of suffer from like a poorly thought through goal that doesn't really help you advance in your design timeline. But overall, like I said, good workshops, they are a soft skill. Just because you're a good designer doesn't mean you can put on a good workshop. So believe in yourself, people. Your soft skills matter, and they won't embarrass you when you have a room full of people and you're supposed to be facilitating a workshop. Cool.
Cool. And so picking up on sort of what I had referred to earlier around fast learnings generally being better than large initiatives, just a little asterisk on that. Like sometimes you're launching a whole new product line and there is some level of like thicker development. But when you're when you have a concept and hypotheses, it's better to learn or fail fast is a common thing to say, as opposed to sort of spending a lot of your team's time launching something larger. So who's ready for another Amanda failure story? How does that sound to everybody? Okay, so first, you are limited by the realities of the universe. Like, the truth is, you have a limited number of people, an amount of time. Like, we live in the constraints of the real world, which we will continue to teach our business owners that that is the case and that software doesn't sprout out of the ground just because it sounds cute. So like that means that you're in charge of sort of taking those limitations of reality and doing something useful with them. Talking a little bit about risk and uncertainty. Risk is like the thing that you launch or you and your team launch into the world. What potential does it have to like tank a main metric by 10%, for example? And so a lot of what UX does is help us understand what that risk is and also help us remove some uncertainty around that risk. Like how much do we know about this problem? Is the risk acceptable to us? And so a quick way, if you don't have like all of that UX discovery time or you don't have that allocated, you can launch small things into your product that have some level of risk. That's okay, that's part of your job, and 50% of the time you're going to fail, and you'll be able to learn something quickly from it. And then I'm sure you all have heard MVP. This word gets tossed around a lot in product and design circles. But the way that I read like a hot take on this a few years ago that was really around like your MVP is not just like the minimum functionality that you can provide. It's like your first attempt to understand the problem space that you're in. And so like look for the smallest thing that you can build that can give you an answer to the question that you're looking for. And so, yeah, failure time. So this is the time that we changed too much at once, and we literally could not, thank you for all the nods, like yes, we know what that is. So we literally could not learn from what we did. So we started with like a pretty solid hypothesis. Clients are more likely to complete a first session or conversion metric within 7 days if they receive a therapist match within an hour. That's like a pretty solid hypothesis. There was a lot we could test there, like a lot of different corners to probe there. We did end up sort of fleshing it out by being like the most scalable way to do that is to increase the number of matches that we make through automated matching, because that delivery is nearly immediate. So we actually, like, those are two separate hypotheses. One is sort of like nested underneath that. And then things got a little rowdy from there. We were like, if we're gonna rely on auto match, we have to collect different types of data, and it needs to look different so that we have the information we need to make effective auto matches. And I don't know if anyone is sniffing like a crazy hypothesis off of that, but that could go in like 35 different directions. And we did. So we're at like major hypotheses at this point. So first we were like, okay, we need to collect more specific reasons for therapy. We're too general at this point. But in our product, like those reasons aren't super great. So we should probably, like, we can clarify those, and then clients will be able to better select what their presenting concerns are. And they'll probably pick the right number of concerns. They probably understand where they're at. I love you. You're so fun. Please always be yourself. It's so great. Like, they'll know how many to select. It'll be great. And then we're like, oh, and if providers have this information, our therapists have this information, they'll be more likely to accept these matches. So we're like 900 hypotheses deep at this point. Like, this has so much potential for just scope creep, if you've heard that, and just getting totally out of control. But wait, there's more. We then said, okay, but wait, we're in COVID. We don't really understand the current landscape of clients wanting to be like in person or video. We know it probably has some effect on conversion, but we don't know, and we think we need to do it better. So maybe we should ask the question differently. Like, maybe that would get us the data we're looking for. And maybe some clients have no preference. Let's add that option in too. Oh, and maybe they'll convert better. That will be great. So we're just like, we're off the rails at this point. But wait, there's more. And we were like, okay, but we have this free text option, and like they'll put stuff in there, and we should probably change that, and then it'll be easier to match them, and then maybe that will reduce the overhead for our operations, and that feels really important. And then like, let's shorten the question set so that we're only getting what we need, and they'll get through, and maybe they'll have less expectations and be more likely to convert. And like, it was out of control. But we ended up building for all of those hypotheses and launching a major change to matching all at once with all of these hypotheses rolled into it. By the way, there was UX and data to support every one of these hypotheses. Just the way that we handled it and treating it as this larger initiative was wrong. Also, I'm not going to run through all of these, but like what you're doing in the product is so far from like the whole picture. So we had all of this stuff going on in the business at the same time, and they were working off of their own data. And we were somewhat coordinated, but we had all of these different levers being pulled and different impacts while we were launching this massive feature. So the result of what we launched, right after launch, our main metric fell drastically. Failure is part of the job, but it's okay. And why did that happen? We had no idea. We literally had like a 9-day bash where like our analysts weren't sleeping, and it was just, we were having like war rooms and stuff, and like the teasing apart of all of these different hypotheses was impossible. We literally learned nothing from 2 months of dev time. And so none of those hypotheses individually were bad. Like I said, they were supported by data and research, but like you can imagine that we could take a piece of one and just like throw it out there. Like we knew session type had some impact on conversion, great. let's test the question for 2 weeks and see if we actually get the data that we want, and how can we build toward this and learn and iterate. And so just to wrap it up, like, you can have a lot of hypotheses. You can think you need to blow up your whole experience and change it, but you're actually missing opportunities for you and your devs to work within the confines and the limitations of the universe to learn what you need to learn in your role. And then, yeah, I'm going to start this one, and then Kate's going to take us home. So leverage the people around you. Can you raise your hand if you're a PM? Or you're thinking of being a PM? Okay. When you're a PM, especially, you feel this pressure. Like, you're the person who's telling people what risks to take. You're the person who's like spending time and spending money. And there is a lot of like, you feel maybe like you have to be the smartest person in the room, and that if someone has a question, you can answer it. And the reality is, like, as Kate said, like, you're not gonna have all of the answers, and neither is anybody else on your team. But the more that you can like allow people to come in with their strengths, the more likely you are to be successful, maybe get 52% of things right. So yeah, you don't have all the answers, neither does anyone else. Value each role. So what Kate brings to the table is like this curiosity, this deep knowledge of the user, the right questions around user experience. PMs bring a lot of like the business and the market and like the scope that you need to answer a question, and that's a partnership as well. Your engineers are going to bring endlessly valuable things to the table. Like, they probably have ideas and hypotheses. They work in the product just as much as you do, and they'll also they'll know how the tech needs to scale to support where you're going. So like, it's really important that you're not dictating to everyone on the team what to do. Really bring everybody in as much as possible and empower them to do their jobs. Like, it's not fun to work with a PM who's like marching for, and I've done that. Like, poor Molly, my UX designer during intake, was just like an order taker for me, and she's so smart and like so good at research. And I wish I could go back and really empower her to do what she's here to do. Fortunately, like, we've worked through that, and she's doing our research and just kind of killing it every day. Okay.
So I'm going to give the example for this one, and I'm going to flip it around a little bit, because yes, definitely leverage the people around you, but also think about how you want to be leveraged, because it goes both ways. I found earlier in my career as a designer, yes, sure, leverage the people around me, but I really think that's like a very important mindset for PMs. I find that to be like a PM problem. And I have said that to PMs before, because I established a really good relationship, soft skills. So I was able to say like, hey, you have so much on your plate and you don't have to do it all. Let us all be good at what we're good at. We're all professionals. Let us help each other. And so early in my career, it was a lot about thinking about how I wanted to be leveraged, what I was interested in, how I wanted to help. And I didn't do this when I was overextended. I did this when I was like barely extended, like I had a little bit of time and was kind of waiting around for my PM. And so I was like, hey, you have so much on your plate. You have all these questions that need to be answered. Let me help you. Let me go out there and do it. And in doing so, I gained a lot of experience. I gained a lot of knowledge and a lot of relationships that I wouldn't have had I not done that. So remember, it's a team sport. You aren't a kid. You don't need to be told what to do. You can often like tell your partners like what you can do. And remember that. This GIF like tangentially has to do with that. I just really liked it. That's all. Cool. Yeah. So those are our 5 mindsets. We're going to put them back up here again. We hope that some of these like resonated with you and that you get the opportunity soon to practice these in the real world. So if you want to advance, yeah, thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciated being here today. Again, I'm Kate Mills. Wait, will you go back for one second?
Sure can. Mm-hmm.
That's Amanda. Please do reach out, especially if we don't have time for all the questions. Connect with us, reach out. We love talking, and we love talking about this in particular, so please do reach out.
And we love listening, which is a really good soft skill to bring. It all comes together, guys.
Cool. How much time do we have? Yeah, we have like 10-ish minutes to do Q&A. So the Slido, if you didn't get a chance, go ahead and throw them on there. we want to give you any other validation that you need or any other like little lessons.
If you want to cry, like we're super down. I cry in half the meetings. It's like a joke. Like I'm effective, but I cry a lot. It's kind of like my reputation.
Okay. Let me just refresh so I can get like the latest and greatest. I'm gonna start from the top. This was submitted by Anonymous, so I'm gonna read the question. If you do wanna like say, hey, that was me, and add anything, please do. This is like a PME question, so I'm gonna toss it to you first. What are general skills or characteristics that make me an attractive applicant to a PM role? What should I be working on as I am applying to product roles?
Such a good question. I have been able to sit on a lot of interview panels at Sondermind, so I've gotten to like think about how I can probe potential PM friends and really find out if they have a track record of these transferable skills or these soft skills. So what I would recommend is you're going to get asked like when was a time when you had to like pick apart a big problem and figure out the steps to deliver them? Or when was a time that you had a hypothesis and you moved toward it, but then you realized you were wrong? And how did you realize you were wrong? And what did you do in light of that? So I actually think the mindset shifts are a really good framework of like thinking of examples. These are exactly the things that I would probe on if I were hiring a PM. And so any time that you can talk about like effective use of resources, like a time when you had a cross-functional team, and I hate the word resources for people, but like a time when you've leveraged the people around you to deliver an outcome, a time when you've measured your success. Really any concrete examples you can bring are a great way to market yourself. You have a demonstrated history of something related to this, so just parse that.
The only thing I'll add, because again, I'm not a PM, but I have interviewed PMs for roles. From my perspective, obviously there's a lot of PME things that you want to demonstrate, that you know both the hard and soft skills of that role. I have interviewed PMs where I'm just talking, a lot of times I'll be like, so here's what I do here, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not kidding, more than once I've talked about research or usability testing and had the PM candidate say, what was that you were talking about? Usability testing? So look, you don't need to be a designer and you don't need to be a researcher and you don't need to be a dev, but damn, you need to know what they do and why that's important to the process. Even if you've just watched a YouTube video, like that's more than like candidates that I've interviewed. I used to work at Aetna, so it was like a giant corporation, and I was like, how did this person get through? Oh my God. So just know a little bit about what your partners do, because you might be interviewing with them and it might not look good for you.
Yeah, and the learning curve of vocabulary is really important. So like, they'll probably in your interview like sling MVP and stuff like that. So I would just say like, get as much exposure as you can to the terminology. There's also one more thing that I just remembered. There was a recommendation that if you're starting your PM career, you should take a world problem that's separate from like the job that you're applying for and think about how you would apply like MVP and learning and like what might be your iteration plan and how might you grow that and solve that problem. So you could do a level of like a thought experiment just to train yourself around that. Like take whatever, like I hate this bus, what would I do differently? Start flexing that muscle. Sorry, go ahead.
All good. People are upvoting, so like the questions are changing. So I'm gonna move to the now top one, which is, how do you prioritize problems to solve? How do you decide whether to improve functionality of existing solutions or start solving a whole new problem? You guys are really good at asking questions.
Yeah,
that's great.
Fire.
I'm gonna let Amanda speak to this a little bit more because it is a little bit more of a PM role. Often like UX or product designers do have influence on this. But it's gonna depend on your organization for sure. Like right now, Sondermind is using OKRs, so our objectives are kind of collaboratively agreed upon by the business and by like the product organization. So that's going to kind of be our guiding way of what we're kind of choosing to focus on. But it's a really good question because it's really easy to just fall into only touching what you already have out there, which sometimes can only give you like so much change, but it tends to be faster and easier. being able to win the argument to do something entirely new, often it's not your decision. It is your fight that you might fight for a very long time. I've been in on those fights, and it's a lot about like building your case and doing as much research as possible and really delving into like metrics and building a case for how you can move those metrics. That's my like designer perspective.
Yeah. So part of this new role that I've moved into is realizing that we have a gap in business strategy and product strategy, and it's actually making us sort of like work out of sync with each other, which I actually think is a really common problem, especially for startups in growth mode. And so, yeah, I think one, to answer that question about which problems to solve, I do think it's twofold. I think there's like, be aware of your business strategy and your product strategy. And if your business or your product leadership doesn't have that, push for it. Like, you literally can't do your job as effectively as you might. You can't set long-term strategy if that's not coming from your leadership. And so like my role, I had my first like pitch to our executive team last week, and it was like frickin' hard. And like there were really hard conversations, but like I can see, having been a PM and having worked with my friends, like where that gap is. And so like it's really hard, but I'm pushing for that. We need a product strategy. We need to know where we're going in 2026 so that people can decide, like, do we have time? Is it valuable right now? Are we missing an opportunity if we don't build this? Is a competitor gonna outpace us because they're moving into more states and we're not because we don't have the product to support that growth? So it's a lot of like, I think there's a framework called like risk of delay. And it's this idea of like, when is this going to be most impactful? How can I hit it with as small an initiative as possible? How can I learn to move us in that direction? And so yeah, I would say start with strategy, get clarity from your leaders. If they don't have it, like leverage yourself. You know your space, like you're in the data, you're with your users, you know your product. Take a position on like where you think you need to grow over the next 3 months, a year if you can get it. And so yeah, it's really hard in a startup, like not gonna lie, you're just kind of going by your gut. Go ahead.
What if you are very early on and it's had the other issue, not that we're not creating new products, but creating them so quickly to try to hit those goals and everything that you're not really having visibility of that?
Yeah, God, such a thing that we go through. That's a real problem. Like I just want to name that as like, that's probably something that is always going to be one of those like persistent things where you're like, oh my God, this is non-functional. Like, okay, fail, great, 50%, let me iterate from there. And so I think that honestly, I think the best thing that you can do is like reduce the size of your MVP as much as possible, because then you'll get sort of more leeway to release something functional more quickly, and just be really clear about what early value you're delivering and what you're not delivering. And try as much as possible to make that space for you and your team to execute really well on that sort of smaller piece.
The only thing I'll add is that good product, good design, good research proselytization, did I say that word right? Proselytizing good product research and design, this is not an instant thing. It is a long road, and you have to keep on keeping on. Do not, become confrontational. Go at it from like a teaching mindset of like, a lot of times your business owners come in and they don't know anything about product. They don't know about research. They might be threatened
by, right? Like they shouldn't.
Yeah, it's not their job to. And they also might be threatened by research. I've had that happen before where they're like, you're questioning me? Like they get very defensive. They're like, who are these people? Where did you get this? And so being very patient and understanding, and it is a long road and it can take a long time. I mentioned that I used to work at Aetna CVS. When I started like 5-ish years ago, there really wasn't any research at that organization. If any of you have ever had Aetna for insurance, that's why it was painful, is because research was a brand new thing like not too long ago. And boy, it was a long road. And I worked with outside stakeholders who had been in their jobs for 30 years. And I mentioned research and they thought that I was like attacking them. They were like, what do you mean? I know everything about this. Mm-hmm. And so being very patient and teaching them, by the end of the time that I was working there, I had those same stakeholders asking us to run research studies. because they learned about it and it became less threatening. So it's not going to happen instantly. I'm sorry. It's a long road, but you'll get there.
Yeah. We're at 10.
Let's do one more question.
One more? Is that okay with y'all?
Because there's one that just got upvoted and it has the most votes. So, and I think it's a good one.
Let's get crazy.
How do you respond to stakeholders when they ask you for a feature and tell you they need it now? Tips or tricks to say no or not yet, which is a really great tip. Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, that's such a great question. Yeah, put it down in your 100 stories in the backlog, like Jira is just the dumpster. Yeah, totally. No, I think this goes back to the strategy. I think there's a balance of two things. There's like the strategy that drives what you're doing in product, and that has to be your North Star. So if a stakeholder is sort of coming in sideways, like, I need this for my initiative, and like this will happen in high growth startups. Like, we form this team whose job is to like drive clinical engagement or whatever, and like that's not in our strategy, like that's not in our plan. And so you have people who are like trying to accomplish something, and it does rely on the product, but like in terms of what you've committed to for like that quarter or that year or whatever, like it just doesn't fit. And so I look for two things. If it's a quick win and it's like a small build and you can like chuck one story into Jira and it's not going to disrupt work and you can see the impact, which is so important. Like, stakeholders getting excited about something is not a reason to build. Understand the data, understand how it supports what you're trying to get done. And then if it's a quick thing, like, yeah, throw it in. Your devs will probably be cool with it. They'll knock it out and they'll keep doing their thing. And so, yeah, I would say like keep resetting strategy. If you and that team member can't come to an agreement or an understanding on how this does or does not play into the strategy, escalate it. Like, that's the time to be like, hello, people who are accountable to us like delivering on this and are gonna go to the board like and be like, we didn't do what you asked, but we did build this other thing. Like, escalate it and just make sure that everybody's on the same page about what you're doing and what you're not doing. Like, draw that line really clearly and make sure that everybody knows what's happening beyond that, whether it's later, whether it's buried in Jira, whatever.
That doesn't just happen at startups, it happens at giant corporations too. Sorry to tell you all. I'll also just echo what I just said. Teaching your partners about product and how it works and like what you do in a non-patronizing way will also help you get there, and they'll start to understand like, hey, this is a process, we can only do so much, there's only so many people. That's also kind of the longer road version,
the realities of the universe.
Yeah. So we're at time, but we'll be hanging around just for a little while if anyone has any other questions, because we had a whole bunch of really good ones. Sorry we didn't get to all of them.
We really appreciate your engagement and your attention. Like, we know it's early and we're just stumbling every day. So like, thanks so much for giving us this.
Thank you.